All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Haven Planning Commission meeting for May 27th, 2026. The time is 6:17. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with a opening ceremonies with a Pledge of Allegiance by Commission Member Jensen and a prayer moment of silence by Vice Chair Rena. Let's stand. Do that for me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered today as a community and to be able to discuss the developments and the items on this agenda that concern our city. We're grateful for the freedoms that we have, for the opportunities we have to gather and be edified by one another. We ask thee to help us as we consider these items and developments, that we might be guided and that we might all work together in harmony and peace to discuss these matters. And this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, commissioners. Item number 3, action on minutes. Anybody have anything? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion. I don't have anything.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 13th, 2026.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Item number 4, reports, actions taken by the city council and other items.
I don't have much to report today. The city council canceled their last meeting. And so we did have a couple of things that are going to them, particularly the 2 code updates that were recommended by the planning commission, but those will be going to the council next week.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephen. Number 5, discussion and action, amendment to the zoning map from mixed use to C2 at 1670 West 21st Street, parcel number 150690066. The applicant, Craig Odekirk.
Yeah, I can give a brief introduction to this. We heard this at our last planning commission meeting, and it was tabled. And so just kind of summarize, the applicant is requesting the planning commission recommend approval of an amendment to the zoning or the city zoning map, changing the zoning on the listed parcel from mixed use to C2, community commercial. The location of the parcel is located at 1670 West 21st Street. The main reason why the applicant is requesting this proposal is they would like to open up, and they've addressed this a little bit in a letter that I'll mention here in a second, but they'd like to open up a cider shop or a tavern or bar, as our code would be the most likely designation of it, on the property. Which would be conditional use within the C2 zone. This use is actually also allowed under its current zoning, but the current zoning would require the applicant to provide a mixture of uses on the property. And since the property is about a half acre, they found that was likely not practical, therefore have requested a zone change to C2. As mentioned, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and discussed the application on our May 13th meeting. At this meeting, there's comments raised by the public concerning the use of the application, its impact on the surrounding area, and also some concern about access. As indicated and as we discussed in that meeting, UDOT likely won't allow them to create a new access point, but it would likely require some sort of shared access. And so after some discussion by the Planning Commission, it was considered, the Planning Commission tabled the item just for further consideration to allow for additional time to give the applicant to respond to concerns that were raised during that meeting. And even though I talked a little bit about this last week, but I'll go through maybe some of the key points again. And so as mentioned, the applicant is seeking to change the zone from mixed use to C2. And I mentioned the differences between that. And within the report itself, I have the purposes of the code written out. So one of the key items that we look at when we're considering a rezoning is what the zoning map or what the general plan map has this area listed. As shown in the report, the parcel is split between a C2 list designation and C3, which is our commercial with C2 up front. And so the zone designation that the applicant is seeking is compatible with the general plan map. There are a few considerations that the code recommends that the city consider. Because with a commercial rezone or multifamily or mixed use, the applicant is required to provide the concept plan. The applicant has provided a concept plan and a concept packet as part of the application that shows the basic layout with the business up front with some parking along the back. It is important to note that the concept plan is just a concept and hasn't gone through the full review or been fully vetted for compliance. If the zoning is approved, and they would have to file a site plan with the city, and we would review it based on our underlying standards. And I think generally speaking, I don't know if I have anything additional to speak on. So, I guess maybe my last thing that I wanted to mention is that the applicant did send over a letter to the Planning Commission that I emailed and also printed a copy and placed it in front of you. That was earlier this afternoon, so I felt like printing it would probably be pertinent or expedient, since some of you might not have seen it in your emails. Are there any questions for staff?
I guess it's more probably for well, first of all, let me say, we had a public hearing on this last meeting, which was on May 3rd. So there is no place for public comments regarding this particular item. I guess my question is probably more for the applicant, but has there been any access granted?
At this point, there hasn't been. I would say typically in the development process, UDOT will oftentimes allow for a pre-application meeting before to kind of figure out what their access needs are. And then once they have that pre-application meeting, which we require as part of the preliminary site plan application for that to happen. And then after that, they turn in their construction drawings and access with UDOT, and UDOT will then issue a conditional access permit prior to us issuing a final site plan approval. If you look at one of the items on tonight's agenda, which is further down the road, that's the process that we followed. Is we require the pre-application meeting during preliminary, and they've secured their conditional access permit like a month or two ago, and now they're up for final tonight.
Okay.
And so as far as I know, I don't know if they have, I know they've had some discussions with UDOT, but I don't know if they've had a formal pre-application meeting.
Okay. Also for the record, we'll attach this to our meeting. And I don't know, does anybody have any questions, comments?
Do you want the applicant to come up?
I guess we can.
I was gonna say, we're just,
One of the applicants,
right? That's all we're
Yeah.
here about.
Well,
mean,
I
at this
I guess I do have a question for one of the applicants, so. And again, your name and address, please.
My name is Scott Odekirk, 2782 West, 1900 North, Plain City.
Okay, thank you. Has anything changed in the last 2 weeks? Do you have access?
We've spoke with UDOT, but we were waiting to get other tasks and processes, the rezone. We want to bring in some designers, some builders to actually come up with the concept plan. We just threw something together because of the requirements, but that's obviously not our finished product. But as far as the rezone, we want to proceed with that regardless of the access until we can get with UDOT on that.
I was under the impression you'd already met with you.
We have, but nothing's been officially done yet until we've come and said we've got the rezone and we want to force the issue of the access.
Okay. But you didn't get access from the neighbor, correct?
We have not got access from him yet, no.
Wait, you have any questions for that? Anyone have questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have anything for discussion?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't here last time, but I did read the minutes and I'm aware of what the access issues are. I'm reluctant to approve this and pass it along to the city council in view of what they recently did with regard to another access issue to a different property, and they tabled that until the applicant had access for that. So, you know, my inclination at this point is not to send it on to the city council until we've got the access in place, because it's going to be required anyway by the city council.
Was it the same issue with that one?
It's very similar, yes.
I think access is a big issue. And, you know, we're supposed to take everything into consideration when we talk about a change to the zone. There's no guarantee that just because it's listed as C2 in the general plan that we have to make it C2. It's just a general plan, just a general map. And it's just how it was drawn up 5 years ago and with those kind of ideas. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I just had a
Sure.
comment. So Commissioner Andrew, we were talking last time that this is just for the zoning, right? We're recommending, we're actually not passing it because that goes to the city.
Right.
Right. So if we go to C2, he can still qualify, could he not, if he wanted to build it like it is on that property, right, with his mixed use?
No,
So
20%, right?
Yeah.
Explain it.
Yeah, so the current zoning would allow for any use that's allowed in C2. It's
Right.
also allowed in the mixed use. The zoning would require that there is a mixture of uses on the property. So on a property this small, what we'd probably see is a vertical mix. And so you'd have something on the bottom and apartments on top. And so they could come in with that site plan application, you know, at any time.
Right.
That would be allowed. And so this change would essentially would eliminate the need to do the mixture of uses.
All right. And then, so with that, we offered some, basically, you want to make sure we go through, because this could be expensive for them if they don't get things worked out before. So we had tabled it. And it looks like everything, they're ready to come back in for the rezoning. They want to go ahead. Let's paraphrase that correctly?
So I believe, if I remember correctly, when I looked at the minutes, I believe there were some concerns brought up by the planning commission, and the planning commission wanted to give some time to the applicant to
Table,
address
yeah.
some of those concerns, which they requested after the meeting to be put on this
Okay.
agenda, to be able to discuss those, and provided the written statement that's before you today.
Okay.
I don't think any of our concerns are with the actual business itself. Correct? It's really just
Certainly.
the access.
Not
Like, I'm
necessarily.
reading this letter and it's like as if it was something with the type of business, and I don't think that's a concern as much as it is the zoning and the access to the property.
Yeah, for me, that's my concern, because correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but the business that's being proposed here is acceptable both in mixed use
Mhm.
and in C2.
Right.
So to me,
Correct.
that's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is, can they get access to utilize it in the way they would want to for the business that they propose? And what I've seen in the past, and I'm not suggesting that you all would do that, but what I've seen in the past is folks come in, get a rezone request, and they're granted the rezone, and then go back and use that for, hey, the city's on my side. They said I can do this. Now you're the one that's holding this thing up.
Mhm.
And so I think this needs to follow the natural course. And I think that that should not be used for leverage that we've granted it, because they can do that anyway right now. Mixed use, they could have that business there.
Sure.
And so getting the access through either UDOT or through agreement with those that have that access that they'll have to share, I think that's a primary step to moving forward.
I thought UDOT was going to have, we wanted them to give the permission or grant access, right? Is this
However they get it.
conditional, but I guess
However they
technically it doesn't
arrange
have to
that.
be, we could change the zoning on it, but until you get the access correct from the UDOT, they, you might
Well-
not still be able to move forward, right? Without the site plan and everything?
So Steve, you can probably speak to that better than I can, but my understanding is UDOT says we're not going to provide another access.
Got it.
There's an access already there. You need to work in agreement with your neighbors to share that access. They don't have that agreement worked out.
Okay.
And so I'm saying that's a principle to establish in the business, whether they were in mixed use or C2,
Right.
is to have that access and that agreement with the neighbors, or work some other route to get access.
Yeah, so that's generally correct. There is a historic access on the site that was for the residential building. That building was torn down, and UDOT generally considers that access abandoned, and they're no longer going to allow for access. They're no longer going to allow that historic access to be utilized for a commercial business. And so, though, like I said, I haven't seen any minutes from any pre-application meeting, and I don't know if UDOT's opinion on this is finalized. But generally speaking, they would require that there's a shared access between property owners for this type of use. And my understanding, based on conversations with the applicant, is when they've asked the UDOT about this question, that has been what UDOT has told them. And in my experience, that seems like that would be the advice that UDOT would give.
Yeah, because if they don't, even if they don't let them add another access point off the road, there could still be a prescriptive easement for access to that, because they need to access their property somehow, correct?
Yeah, UDOT.
UDOT probably wants them to figure it out between two owners, but in the end, there could be a prescriptive easement issued.
I can't really speak for UDOT on this because they control access onto the roadways, but generally they will not landlock somebody or refuse access to a property. That they generally have to allow somebody to have access, though they may push them to do a shared access agreement, and they will use the tools that they have to require that. But once again, that really will come down to UDOT, because this is a UDOT roadway and they control the access points, and any development would have to meet their access standards.
They could also limit the type of access. So, if it's not a combined one, they could say you can have access, but that doesn't mean you can operate a business out of it. I mean,
Correct.
so it could possibly be all, any number of those things. But really, at this point, this is just a rezone. All of the access issues are site plan, on that site plan level. So really, you need to be looking at, does this rezone request comply with the general plan? Right now it does.
Can we put a timeline on a rezone? Like, say, you have this long to get it back. If it doesn't work, it reverts back to what it was.
The council has, I'd have to look at our code. I know the council can approve a rezone conditionally and put conditions within the ordinance. We did that recently with with a boundary adjustment that they had to do that followed the rezone. But that might be a better question for Amy to answer.
I mean, our code does allow it, but frankly, it's a little bit. It makes it difficult when you have the conditions, because that means that somebody's going to have to be monitoring it, and whether or not those conditions slip through the cracks or not. You know, Stephen and Damien are great, but what if Stephen and Damien aren't here? You know, heaven forbid that be the case, but you know, it's just one of those things where if you do it conditionally, that's the only risk that you know that the city runs, is that. But there is a section of the code, like Stephen mentioned, that allows for conditions. I still think though the access issue is pretty integral to developing the site versus dealing with the rezone.
And I will say, one reason I didn't recommend any conditions within the report is I think the barriers that they're running up against are generally handled through our site plan process. Like, we require them to receive a conditional access permit prior to final approval, and we require those pre-application meetings and an access plan as part of the preliminary site plan. And so I guess that's why my staff report, if the planning commission felt the zoning was appropriate, I didn't feel any additional conditions were required, because I feel like our code would cover that if they came in for a site plan approval.
My feeling is kind of unlike George. I have no problem with a rezone, because those other problems are going to have to be taken care of, whether we do the rezone or not. It just is one hurdle, I guess, that they're over, but they've still got a whole lot of hurdles to deal with. That I don't know that this is a big sticking point right now for me. I'm fine with the no rezone, because I think the access stuff is still going to have to be dealt with, and it's still going to have to happen. And whether you do this or not, I don't think it needs to be conditional on the rezone. My thoughts.
I'd agree with that. And I think my point in recommending tabling the item at our last meeting was mostly geared towards making sure that they understood the hurdles that they were going to run into with this if we approved C2. And that way they could still go back under the same application and say, hey, maybe we want to change this to something else or withdraw or whatever it is. But, you know, if they've come back, they've done their due diligence. This is just a rezone. We're not approving the use. We're not approving the building. They're just required to submit that as part of the rezone process. You know, this is a strict rezone. They can come and do C2, run through all these hurdles, and then realize, hey, it's not worth it. We'll do something else that falls within C2. So, and that, in my opinion, is their prerogative. It's their property.
Agree with that.
I guess my issue with it is this is going to be more of a production facility than it is something that's.
Yeah, but that doesn't
Local.
really have to do
No.
with the reason.
No, I understand that, but as Stephen said in his report, we have to weigh all the all the various things as we go through, and I don't know. I don't see this actually being able to happen, but that's pretty much where I am. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
Let me put in some
Sure.
new sense here, just listening. And the general plan is our guideline. It's something that we need to follow as much as possible, unless there are variables that make it not amenable to going forward. I think at this point in time, without access and where it's sitting right now, I don't feel comfortable going forward with the rezone, regardless of whether or not it's on the general plan, just for those reasons. I would feel like, I don't feel like it moves to a C2, like that does anything, that doesn't rezone, the rezone doesn't really do anything along this road, if we're looking at our general plan and what we want to go for, this is great, except access onto this busy road already has not been granted, and trying to pull out on that road right now for the community members and the apartments and everything that's just down from it, that I just don't, you know, and I don't see that going through. I don't think another access right there is going to happen. And so right now, as far as the rezone goes, I don't feel like that is something that I would even consider at this point in time. But I'm one voice.
Really, that's the first thing that needs to be figured out. The site plan could change. The site plan that's been presented to us could change based on the access they're granted. I'm sorry. So that's really the first thing that needs to be done is get this access figured out. The site plan that's been presented to us could change based on the access that UDOT grants, or whether they're able to work it out with folks. So, what we're seeing presented before us may not be what we'll see, and that's okay too. But I mean, it's in their best interest to get that thing solved right off the bat before they do anything else. Let's get the access to. So, I think if they come back here with the access, that's going to streamline the whole process. You can go to the city council can approve it. There's going to be a holdup somewhere, whether it's here or whether it goes to the city council. I'd like to have things done as much as possible before that goes to the city council. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I don't think I expressed myself quite well enough to the whole thing about access. For me, this is production facility. They've got grinders, they've got hydraulic presses, fermentation tanks, all of these things, especially to crush apples and get juice extracted from it. That means you got to haul in apples. It's also distribution, kegging, packaging line, cold storage. There's just a lot of different variables with the traffic, and we just don't know if they're going to even be able to get the access to it. And that, again, with the traffic, it's going to be heavier traffic of larger vehicles than just a driveway to what used to be a house. So that's where I am.
But this could also change. I mean, this is just a preliminary, whatever. There might not even go that far. And it's hard to even know what to do until you know if you have the change. If you change it to a C2 or whatever, and is it harder for them to even get UDOT to make a decision without knowing for sure whether we've changed it or not?
Changes zoning.
Changes zoning, sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
I don't know.
I mean, the entire use of this piece of property is going to be determined by the access they can get to it.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So that's the fundamental thing that needs to be resolved, regardless of what use they want to put this to.
Mhm.
And whether we approve it or not,
recommend it. Yeah.
or recommend
Recommend it.
for approval, sorry, whether or not we recommend it, it's still zoned for that. Still zoned mixed use. It's still zoned so that could go in there depending on if they want to go through the parameters of mixed use. So whether or not UDOT approves an access isn't really up to us. It is, they're not waiting, the applicant isn't waiting on zoning. It's already zoned for that. If UDOT's going to approve it, they're going to approve it with or without our approval, because both of those, it complies under that. I just, one of the things that our ability to go around the general plan goes to whether or not it's detrimental to the community. And the way that lot is set up right now and the way the access that it would have to be granted for them, I just feel it's detrimental to the community. And that ability to go around that for that reason is basically my thoughts on that. I don't know what would change that. I don't know. And I guess if UDOT granted them that, then that's UDOT really overriding. They're saying that that access is okay going onto 21st Street, as busy as it is, and with all the different entrances coming out of there and the apartments and the condos and all that coming out on the, just east of that. But right now, that really is a not a great use for 21st Street right now.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the city council the denial of the petition to amend the zoning map to change the zoning designation of the property 150690066 at approximately 1670 West 21st Street from mixed use to C2 and the included concept plan.
Second. All in, I have a motion and a
Sorry,
second. All-
could you mind, is there any, for me to forward this to the council, is there any reasons that the planning commission would like to indicate?
Well, I think just what was previous stated,
Yeah,
basically the
access,
access and.
traffic.
Go ahead. I was
Oh,
gonna-
no, I'm sorry. You're doing it.
Your
You do
motion.
it.
Do you want to vote first, Stephen, before you know what it comes out to be?
I guess if there's a reason for the motion, I think that's mostly what I'm looking for, so that way I can.
And really just access and the impact it has on that community because of, even if it's granted access, that, you know, the ability for the traffic congestion that it's going to cause. It just doesn't seem feasible, doesn't seem great for that area.
Okay.
I
Doesn't-
concur. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That's 4 ayes and 3 nays, I believe.
Want to do a roll call? Was that for?
You need a roll call, Emily? All right. Commissioner Lamar?
Nay or aye
Yeah, okay, if you need it read back, I'm sure she can do it faster than a speeding bullet. Okay, you're a yay.
I'm an aye.
Nay.
Okay,
Nay.
aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
All right. Got it? Okay, great. Thank you. Item number,
Stephen, will that, sorry,
That'll be sufficient.
will it go forward still and then the city council will?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll plan on, for those that are interested, we'll plan on putting it on the next city council agenda, which Emily, that would be next week, right? Okay, next week on Wednesday.
thank you. All right. Item number 6, presentation on public hearing for the adoption of an economic development strategic plan. And I know that's Stephen.
Yes, that is me. Thank you. So we did a workshop on this at our last meeting, where our consultant was here to present on this. And so I'll just review. I'm not going to go to the same depth that he did at the last meeting, but I will walk through kind of the highlights, what the purpose of this plan is, and why we're considering it. So West Haven last year contracted with Urban and Main Consultants or consulting to create an economic strategic plan. And then over the past year, staff and a steering committee that made up of a couple council members, the mayor, city staff, and Commissioner Reyna guided the creation of the plan that's before you tonight. The City Council and Planning Commission held a joint workshop on March 18th to discuss the plan's concept with the staff and the consultant, and the Planning Commission also held an additional workshop as mentioned last week. So really the purpose of this master plan is to create or is to study the economic development potential within the city and to kind of indicate areas of where appropriate commercial uses would be appropriate or feasible, and then also create a list of action items or policies that the city could undertake to pursue economic development goals within the city. What ways can we attract business or attract the right business that we'd like to see, and how do we support local economic growth? So the plan is really broken up into 5 sections. The first one is an introduction. So this section contains an introduction and the process, and describes the process that the plan went to create the plan and recommended policies. This includes so many of the items that we did to undertake this is we had a consultant who performed a few economic studies, looked at the demographics of the city. We also held small workshops with different stakeholders within the city, including business owners, development community, residents, public officials, including representatives from the state and from the city, and got their feedback on our development process, what the development potential is within the city. Is there any barriers to economic development? And kind of we try to get a broad feedback from key members within the community who could provide that type of insight. As part of that, we also issued a survey that went out publicly. The section 2 is really kind of provides the strategic plan. This section contains the different goals and policies recommended by the plan. So a lot of this kind of has the, a lot of the bread and butter of what we could actually do. So we have our action plan and toolbox within it. And within that section, it highlights 5 key priorities from the city, or that the city should focus on. The first one is strengthen and diversify the local economy. 2, improve fiscal sustainability and diversify municipal revenue. 3, manage growth proactively. 4, modernize planning and development processes. And 5, enhance community identity and quality of life. So, and then it lists out a lot of different actions that we could take. And as you saw attached, there's a matrix that was included within the plan to help us track actions that we're taking. So as part of this, the idea behind these, this amount of action items that would be potential, it's not that necessarily the city would utilize every single one of them, but would prioritize which ones we felt like were key. However, after discussion and in the process, there was really 6 primary action items that were identified that felt like they would have the largest impact. The first of those would be prioritize zoning and infrastructure readiness in key economic development areas identified in the plan. In key economic development areas, plan for infrastructure development and design to enhance placemaking and access, support, modernize, and redevelopment of aging industrial development within the 21st Interchange and 1900 West key development areas to retain business and to accommodate high-value employers. This should be done by zone change and updates to zoning standards to allow for a mixture of higher impact commercial and lower impact industrial development to coexist. Identify other sites within these areas that would support lighter commercial uses and mixture of housing and zoning them appropriately. The 4th is prioritize commercial and mixed-use zoning in commercial centers, transportation corridors, and other accessible high visibility locations. 5, prioritize development of walkable town center that offers opportunities to live, work, and recreate with gathering spaces that allow for civic events, marketing, and community interactions. These areas should be identified within the general plan. And 6, launch a business retention and expansion program. One of the things that 6 in particular, one of our consultant mentioned that, it's much easier to retain business than it is to attract new business. And so finding ways to enable existing businesses to continue to thrive here has a larger impact. So moving on to the next section, implement for our content for implementation of the section. As I mentioned, this section contains the matrix, as I mentioned earlier, and recommendations on how to best implement the plan and the recommended actions. Section 4 is our context section. This contains the SWOT analysis that was performed and also contains the map of the key economic development areas and general recommendations for future land use in those areas. And then 5 includes the appendices, which contains supporting information and tools, including a list of economic development tools allowed within the state of Utah. So we've reviewed this a couple times now. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission discuss the various aspects of this plan. If there are additional changes that they would like to see or modifications, to let staff know, and so we can make those changes. And if there is no additional changes, staff would recommend that the Planning Commission give a positive recommendation on it. Any questions?
That was quick.
You did good there.
I say, if you want, I can dive in more deeply, but
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. All right. Yeah, that's the presentation. Anybody want to make a motion to enter public hearing?
I'll make a motion to enter public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now in public hearing. So here's the rules governing public hearings. I'll try and get it faster than Stephen got his. Each speaker will be limited to a single opportunity to speak and shall direct comments only to the commission. Such opportunity may not exceed 3 minutes, as has been determined by the chair, as outlined in Resolution 28-2021. In accordance with Resolution 28-2021, the chair may refuse to recognize or may exclude from public hearing anyone who is abusive or disruptive, takes part in or encourages audience demonstrations such as applause, cheering, display of signs, or other conduct disruptive to the hearing. Comments without first receiving recognition from the chair and stating his or her full name and residence, or presents irrelevant, immaterial, or repetitious evidence. Comments and questions raised by speakers will not be addressed by or answered by staff or commissioners during the hearing, but will be addressed upon conclusion of the hearing. All right. If there's anybody who would like to come forward and speak to this, please come on up. We need your name and address, please.
Thelma Isaacson, 2740 South, 2700 West, West Haven. So one question I have is, how do you get on this committee so that we have an input and more knowledge? So I'd like that answered. The other thing is, usually when there's been something that would impact residents, we've gotten a letter saying, hey, this is a possibility, so that we'd know to come to the meeting. It just happened that Leslie found out about this, and so that's why we're here. So it'd be nice to get that letter, or, you know, so that we could be aware and be here for input. From what the map looks like, it looks like we're thinking there's going to be an exit from Legacy once it gets this far down onto 2550. And so that's why we're looking at putting businesses around 2700 and 2550. But what we're thinking is that Legacy is going to be farther out west. The people that are traveling and continuing on north on Legacy won't come clear to 2700, 2550 to do business. They're going to stop at businesses that are right along that road and jump back on and continue on. So that, you know, that may not impact or be a benefit for the city to have those right there. Another question I have is the exit. Is there going to be an exit off of Legacy when it comes this far onto 4000, where there's already established businesses, where we could add more businesses that people that are getting off could stop at? My feeling always is to keep businesses in already established areas. And it's not the fact of wanting by you, not me. It's where there's already businesses established, people, when they build a home or a business, know what they're building by. But if you're bringing businesses into a residential area where people have lived there for 50 years, like I have, you know, it's something that I didn't ask for and didn't decide to move by. Does that make sense? So I'm, like I said, a longtime resident. I care about West Haven. I spent 20 years as the youth city council youth city council advisor for West Haven. I put a ton of time into it. I loved it. And my kids come back to our home. My grandkids come back. They're there every Sunday, every Monday during the gardening season. And we just like to keep the community you know, like I said, have a residential area in one place and the business in another. And, you know, our cars travel a mile to get to a store. It doesn't have to be, you know, dispersed so much. One other thing, when the city was established, it was West Haven City, country living at its best. And for some reason, that slogan's been gone, and it's now not. When you go to the Weber County Fair, it says West Haven City and something about businesses. What happened to the country living? We want to keep that country living for those of us that moved here for that reason. My last comment is some of the property that looks like on the map you may be talking about isn't for sale. And so, you know, the property owners need to be talked to and you know, asked what they would like and some input be put in. And lastly, thank you for your time and for the efforts that you put in for the city. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you for working with the youth council. That's not easy. Do we have anybody else? I just need your name and address, please.
My name is Byron Lee Comby. My address is 2877 West, 2550 South in West Haven. My wife and I have lived there for 30 plus years. The land was purchased by Brother Dean Moyes probably 40 to 50 years ago, the same as the Caps. And imagine it in the ballpark of 40 to 60 years ago. I don't know exactly when, but a long time. They've been devoted citizens of this city forever. They purchased the land for their way of life, for their future plans for their children and their grandchildren to have a place to be able to put a home someday. So I know for a fact that some of these lots where I live and right around my house is being given to their children and or grandchildren to be able to afford a house, to plot to put their house on. And in this day and age, there's almost no way for a child to be able to afford a home without the land being given to them this way. Cindy, my wife, and I, her dad, Dean Moyes, gave us our parcel right at that address I told you about to put a house on 30 years ago. And we've loved West Haven. We've paid taxes in West Haven forever. And I just think it's just the wrong choice to be able to put people that's been devoted to this city for 30, 40, 50, 60 years plus. Where I live in that subdivision, in that area right around me on that corner, when there's more available lots for sale right straight across the street of me, north of me, straight across the street. There's houses southwest of me. I mean, there's open areas southwest of me with no homes on it. That'd be better for your use and more affordable. And when I found out about this, I made an inquiry with an attorney in the state's attorney's and the district attorney's office to find out if this is even legal, and it is legal, what you're trying to do, but I know the cost that it would take to purchase my home and all these homes that are in this area right there on that corner would outweigh and be extremely high compared to the cost it would be for you folks to be able to purchase the land that's barren and empty, like straight behind Annie DeFreeze's old house, straight south or north of me, and right down the road southwest of me, there's a big corner lot for sale that's just as big, with no homes on it, no devoted members of the communities on it, with a dozen houses like they're in my area. And so we're just asking that it be, well, just considered highly, that it's just, we're never planned on moving. We've loved it here in this city. We've devoted ourselves to West Haven days and everything else forever. And it's just a beautiful country community. And we want to just stay right where we're at, right where we're at. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Okay.
And I am not a resident of West Haven. My wife owns the property, the same property that Lee was talking about.
Could you give us
You
your
know,
name
and what we're just asking is that it be that my name is Larry Caldwell.
and your address?
What's that?
Your address.
2877 West 2550 South.
Okay, great.
Same piece of property.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. And my wife is co-owner of the property, you know, through the Dean Moyne Trust. And it just seems like we would like just requesting that the property be taken off of consideration, you know, for, I guess, the recreation building. And it seems to me that there's also an issue that the West Jordan River District owns land or has a right-of-way through that property. And it seems like that could present an issue if a building is built on that. I don't know that it really can be. So there again, my wife Darlene Caldwell is also requesting that property be taken off consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think everybody's pointing a finger at you, ma'am.
Short and sweet, hopefully not fall in front of the podium.
Okay. Name and
Or be
address.
emotional. Selena Hart. I live at 2785 West, 2550 South in West Haven. We also have lived here before the city became a city. In fact, we were one of the proponents to get the city started because me and a few neighbors had some darling little girls that always was playing t-ball in other cities. And we had a majority of people that were doing that. And anyway, so we wanted our own recreation. Other things were happening to beginning of West Haven. Anyway, my son has paid a surveyor to survey the property that's right behind me, that he and his family would like to build a home on an acre lot here in West Haven because we all love West Haven. We've all supported West Haven, and we also, some on the property, along that property, have no intention of selling it for commercial. I mean, anyway, I can't speak for everyone there, but we have family interest in all of that property to 2700 West. It's about 20 acres.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. I love Thelma Isaacson. We have worked for a long time. I was on the Parks Committee probably for 15 years.
Well, thank
and
you.
helped with things. We love West Haven. We love everything about it. We want to live in West Haven.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elisa Hoffmeister. My address is 1652 North, 225 West in Harrisville. But I do have an acre that was given to me from my grandmother on 2700 and 2550 South. And I'd like to let you know for the record that property belongs to my siblings and my parents. My father has been an ag developer for over 87 years. His father was a combine. They've just farmed it forever. And that is my father's intention, to either have it be ag and have his children and grandchildren live on it. And it is not for sale for business.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Hill. My resident is 3012 South, 2125 West, West Haven. I am a new resident to West Haven. I've been there for about 5 years now, and that property that they're talking about is my grandparents' property. And I love West Haven because of my grandparents' property. I moved to West Haven because of my grandparents. I lived in other cities growing up in Harrisville and Sunset, but West Haven, yes, it's the country life that we all would like to have. My house is nowhere near on an acre, but that property does belong to my grandparents and my cousins and my aunts and uncles, and we want to be able to have a community for ourselves and our family. And we just want to be heard when we talk about that this is family driven and something that we have wanted for a really long time, and we want to continue this on for generations and not just have businesses that come in that you guys are catering to for the generation that lives in a condo that is going to come and go. These people have been here for 30, 40, 50 years, and that's what I want. I want to be in this city for 30, 40, 50 years, and I know that they want their great-grandchildren to be in this community for that long as well. So just take that into consideration, that it's not for the people that are coming here to live in a condo for 2 years and then they're moving elsewhere. But that's all I have to say, and thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question before you sit down? What parcel is your grandparents? Do you know their address?
It's the 2550, 2700.
Thank you. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. You were helping, so it's okay.
Carolyn Baldwin, 2787 South, 2700 West, on the caboose on the CAP property. My biggest concern about the strategic plan is in reference to the property at 2550 and 2700. It identifies one owner, single owner, but it goes real deep off of 2550 into not just single owners. In fact, you can't really tell what they're trying to identify because it looks like they're going about 2800 south and about 2850 west based on the blue mark. And then on the other side, on the north side of 2550, they're into Taylor. So I don't know if they're trying to annex that portion of Taylor in, or it's just there's some flaws in the strategic plan that concern me just because they're identifying it. They list it as it would be a target because there would be a single ownership, and there's single owners on the north side because I think the water district owns that, and they're the ones that have already identified in the strategic plan that don't wish to sell. So I get that things change in West Haven because we've seen it, and we see that there's going to be more growth and more traffic and things change on there. But my biggest concern is that when you make a strategic plan, the information should be correct so that you can act on that. And I think that you're identifying the 21st Street and 4,000. Those make a lot of sense to me, especially if you're talking about walkability and the things that are already there. And I'm not targeting 4,000. I'm just saying that the stuff is already there. It just seems like we could move, change your site to areas that would make more sense than a completely undeveloped, more than single owners, and where it's mostly agricultural. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Dean Murray, 2554 West, 2400 South. how did you guys propose this land that the West Jordan River owns? How'd that even become available? Have they agreed to this?
We're not answering questions right.
Oh, you're not answering
Not-
questions.
Not right this minute, no. It's a public hearing. Giving you
Okay.
an opportunity to tell.
All right. Well, it just, because originally West Jordan Water was going to come in and we fought them tooth and nail about coming in. When they came in anyway, we told them we didn't want them here and they came in anyway. And it ended up being taken to court and we won. So, but they still bought the ground and you guys have acknowledged them as West Jordan River Water District. They own it, but they've never been approved to even come in. And so my thought is, I can't see them selling that because they're going to sell it for, they've got to sell it for the same price they bought it for. They can't make a profit on it. Well, they only paid $11,000 an acre for it. I can't see you guys, that was my concern. Why would they sell it now? And why would you guys come up with this plan that you know is not going to work? I don't see it working. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Leslie Barrow. My address is 2777 South, 2700 West. I am the seventh caboose baby of the CAPS that you've heard a lot about tonight. I was the surprise 12 years after their first 12-year group. So I've always grown up fully anticipating seeing what the next generation of CAP family farms would look like. I built my home on an acre there per the current zoning, expecting to fully be surrounded by nieces and nephews that I grew up with someday, possibly some of their kids, depending on how long I'm lucky enough to live. I was not expecting a grocery store directly across the street, or expecting expansion that would probably drive my current home, which is the closest to the property edge, to possibly be pushed out of being a home if you have to expand the road farther than like 1 lane additional each way. If it has to become a main crossway from 24th Street all the way down to the new Legacy when it gets there, this amount of traffic that's going to bring right into that center portion would absolutely drive having to take my home out before that expansion could be done. I knew growing in that there would be a certain amount of widening of the road, went with all of the easeways and everything like that. But if that's going to become real city center, my current home would have to be taken out, even if I have no intention of selling, just for the road. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Cindy Comby. I live at 2877 West, 2550 South. And I just want to say that I do agree with everything that's been said today. I love West Haven. I was here at the start of it, and I agree with them that it was designed to be country living. And I don't have any problems with commercial, but they need to be in commercial areas, not where people are living. And I think it would be a really dishonor to take out all of our homes and put commercial buildings or whatever you have planned for that area. So I just want to say thank you for the work you do, but please rethink your plan to take our homes and look at property that is available and doesn't have homes on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, nobody else? Anybody online that wants to raise their hand or talk or? Okay. If there's no one else, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I just make a quick comment, and Stephen, you can correct anything that I'll say. That I wonder if this plan may have been a little misconstrued of exactly what it is. This is not taking your property and marking it as, hey, we're going to put this here, or telling you we're going to put this here. The city isn't planning on buying this land that I know of, maybe, but this is just saying, hey, as our city grows, these areas are ones that we want to look at that have potential and make sense as far as the city layout to grow. So if someone decides to sell their parcel of land, we want to say, hey, before you put in residential or houses there, this might be a good spot for commercial, right? Someone's going to eventually, and this isn't looking out, 3 years from now, 2 years from now. This plan is made to be 10, 15, 20 years from now, to say, hey, as these pieces of land become available, as people decide, hey, we want to sell, these are areas that we want to take another look at and say, there's an opportunity here. Let's really see whoever's going to buy that piece of land. Let's look at that and make sure that we're getting the best use out of that land. We're not saying this is going to get rezoned any certain way. It flows into kind of the general plan. And there's another zoning piece that complements this that says, okay, we've identified these areas. It might be good to consider zoning them like this these are the zones that we would consider looking at when they come in for a rezone. But that's not set in stone either. As you can see, we saw someone come in for a rezone today that, a lot of us, there was disagreement on whether or not that should actually be rezoned, and that was on our general plan to be rezoned that way. So this isn't kind of marking your land in any way and saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. We're not going to force people to sell. We can't force people to sell. It's one of those things where it's just, hey, as we grow, we need our economy to grow too. And these are areas that have potential to help that economic development and economic growth in the city. So as they come available, before we kind of just let anybody come in that wants to come in and buy a piece of land that's for sale there, let's really look and see what the best use for the city is in those areas. That's all I wanted to say.
That was great. Thank you for clarifying that. It's good. Even?
Yeah.
Hit some of those.
Yeah, I can hit some of those
questions.
points. Hey, Emily, would it be possible to pull up the packet, page 67? I think that's where we're going to spend most of our time discussing today. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out to speak. This is actually the best moment to come to speak about our plans. So I do want to just maybe reiterate what Andrew said, that at this point, what we're looking at for the economic strategic plan is a guiding document. It's not a legally binding document. It doesn't, if a property is labeled as potential for economic development, it does not mean that the city is looking at purchasing or condemning property for that economic development. But West Haven has been, throughout its history, we've tried to be proactive in our planning, but reactive in the development of property. So we're not proactively causing property to be developed, but acting based off of applications that come in. And I don't really foresee that changing, where we'll take a more proactive step. And the plan does not recommend that either. The plan generally recommends that we work with property owners as property is being proposed for development. And so, as I mentioned, is the labeling on this map, the areas that are labeled in this map as potential economic development. That's really what we're looking at, is potential economic development in areas that have economic development potential, but doesn't necessarily require them to be developed that way, as stated. There were a couple questions that were also brought up that I thought I could address. So we kind of talked about what the map actually means. It's a recommendation document to help the city create plans for how the city is going to look like in the future. As Andrew said, this isn't necessarily next year, but we're looking at a long view. So there was a question about West Jordan Water Conservancy District, or Jordan Valley, excuse me, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. So Jordan Valley has been involved in the discussion of the creation of this map. They have indicated that generally they're wanting to keep the majority of their property, but have indicated that they are open to, there's been a lot of interest in some commercial development on this corner, and they have indicated an openness to like working with a potential buyer and what that development would be, working with the potential buyer and the city, which is one of the reasons why we felt this area was appropriate to plan for, because we've seen that commercial interest on this intersection. And so that's kind of that was one of the main driving points. One of the reasons for the scope of the map is not only, and this is something that we even talked a little bit about earlier today in our workshop with the general plan. But the scope of the map was really to highlight areas that potentially could see economic impact, and also the areas that would support any economic growth as those areas are developed. Yeah, Emily, do you want to just zoom in on that 2550?
67.
Yeah, 67 I think is a better.
Okay, 67.
It's got just that, focused on that.
Yep, one up.
Oh, you went past.
There's 71.
Oh, 67 on the packet, but it's page. It is page 34 on within the document. Yep.
Right there. Right there.
Yeah. There was a question about the future Western Weber corridor, and where that connections are going to be in the city. The best answer is, as of right now, or the most accurate answer, it hasn't been decided. UDOT is looking at several options, but it has been indicated that 2550 South is a possible location for an interchange, and that would connect. The idea is that those would eventually connect the Western Weber corridor directly with I-15. So though we don't know where that's going to be, that has been an option that's been discussed by UDOT. Though they are also potentially looking, there's likely one on 4000 South as well. So I think that really, I know there's a few other questions, but I think generally the idea of I think a lot of the other questions about into what property should be on, I think that's a question better handled by the Planning Commission. I think there are a few options moving forward that the Planning Commission could consider. Obviously the first one is to keep the map as it currently is. Our next couple options are we can remove this section or this map or even the 2550 South from the plan altogether, if that's something that we wanted to, or we could look at altering what those properties were. Well, I know one recommendation during our workshop was potentially looking at properties particularly north of 2550. I didn't catch everybody's address, but my general understanding is most of the comments came from property owners on the south side of 2550. And that area, I think, is less likely to have more major redevelopment. And so that may be an appropriate conversation. I also think one of the reasons, the question also came up is why did we go outside city boundaries on this map? The main reason for that is potential annexation. If that property annexes into the city, we have already had some consideration of what that potential use could be. Were there any, those are kind of the big items I had.
I had one more on there, that what was what west was legacy? And then the other question was that interchange off of the freeway that's coming, that connects 2550, right? The new interchange will connect 2550 all the way down to to Legacy, which is, what west is it?
Still 51.
It's,
50.
well, it's 51, but it starts to curve away at that point. Well, their concept, they don't have a design yet for this section, but their concept shows that it will continue. It's around 51 in West Haven on the south end, but after about 33, it starts to curve.
Curves, okay.
Yeah.
The other couple questions we might just want to answer. Someone mentioned how could they get involved in helping decide some of this stuff? And how do they get notified? And Stephen, you might want to mention that I know that we've had lots of planning meetings about this.
Yeah, because this is a general document, and under state code, because a general document normally affects the city generally, we're not required to send out notices to individual property owners. And one of the reasons for that is it is a guiding document. It's not a if it was a zone change and we were contemplating changing the zoning, then yes, we would be required to send out that notification. And so that's why we didn't provide like mailing notices to potential property owners within these economic areas. But that being said, we tried as a planning department, we're trying to hold a little bit more. We want to be open and transparent to the public. And we've been holding some open houses about our general plan to talk about these areas, which covers many of the same topics. And our office is always open for people who have questions. We've had many property owners within this area come talk to us about potential development, and we've heard feedback on different, and not only just this area, but other areas throughout town that we've tried to incorporate concerns or feedback or desires that they may want to see on this for this area. I know there was a question about the future of 2550 South, about its expansion. I don't actually know what that's going to look like. It's already one of our wider roads, and I think currently we're not anticipating it getting any wider. However, we are going to do a transportation master plan we're going to start, I was going to say next fiscal year. So starting after July, to do modeling throughout the city to see how the new UDOT projects are going to affect traffic and provide some recommendations on what roadways are going to look like. And that process will, like I said, our goal is to start that this late summer, and we anticipate that planning process will take a year. We're requiring at least a single open house and online survey and potentially an interactive map for residents to comment on as part of that process.
I know that there's also been, we had a thing at the barn where people could come put their input in. There's been several opportunities. It's been on social media. It's been on the city's website. So there's actually been quite a bit that people could have, if they were interested, they could have found out more information. Yeah.
I will say, I do remember when we were discussing this item though, in our group, we did go back and forth on the south side of that property because the concern was, the difference between the south side and the north side of that property is that the south side is owned by families generally, all of you that are here. So we did go back and forth about it, and I know that, it ended up getting put there ultimately because, again, this is, when we're looking at this, we're thinking, okay, what does this look like 15, 20 years from now, not, 5 years from now. So, I mean, in my mind, and it was one of the concerns of like, well, who knows if these people how long it'll be before they sell, but just seeing and hearing some of the feedback today, I think it probably makes sense to maybe eliminate those sections, the south side of it from this plan, given that, some of the comment is that this is generational and that we already have some of the younger generations here present that are saying we want to stay on this land. So.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd offer me a little bit of latitude, I'd like to ask a question of the folks out here just by a show of hands.
Well, that's different, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So what we're faced with as a city grows, is bringing in revenue to support the services for a growing city. And one of the ways that we do that, in fact, the major way that we do that, or practically the only way that we do that is through sales tax. Somebody mentioned they've been paying taxes in West Haven for the last 30 years or something, and no, you haven't. And I know that's a little blunt, but West Haven City is one of only 2 cities in the state that does not have a city property tax, the other one being Marriott Slaterville. So we're getting to the point the city is growing, we've got a growing population. There's some difficult decisions that are going to have to be made in order to provide the services to the city that this growing population imposes on the city and demands. And so economic development is one area that we're looking at and focusing on. The other is imposing a city property tax. And I will tell you that if you remember, about 8 years ago, it was proposed that the city have a property tax, and the citizens overwhelmingly shut that down, thankfully, and I supported them doing that at that time. Now we're growing significantly beyond that. But if I were to ask you guys by a show of hands, would you prefer economic development to be pursued in the city, or have that tamped down, stifled a bit, and a city property tax? And I don't know what the amount would be, but the state regulates the maximum that could be. But by show of hands, how many would say I'd prefer a city property tax rather than having economic development take place in this area? So, okay, first, city property tax. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.5.
And apparently you can't
Okay.
vote twice.
Now, who would prefer to have economic development? Right.
Very off the grid,
One.
George.
And
They're not all voting.
2, and who didn't raise their hand? Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate indulging me, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll take it away.
And then
Move.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion. I think the vice chair has a good one over here.
Okay. I'll make a motion to table the adoption of of our economic development strategic plan to review all of the areas, but in particular the 2550 South area.
I'll second. A motion, oh, I forget that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number, lost track. We did that. Okay, item number 10, final site plan approval for Super Stop at 1514 West 2100 South, parcel number 150690050, applicant Omar, and I hope I don't screw this up. Mansour? Okay, thank you. All right, Damien.
Okay, so this is a request for a final site plan approval. It's for a redevelopment of a existing commercial convenience store site, and that's located at 1514 South on 2100 West. The property size is about 1.45 acres, and it's currently zoned mixed use. Some background behind this request. Again, it is existing as a convenience store. The current building is about 4,300 square feet, and the proposal is just slightly larger than that at 5,050 square feet. But it is a redevelopment of the entire site, so the parking lot is proposed for redistribution and also internal circulation is going to change significantly as well. This has already been reviewed, though, at the preliminary level. It's almost a year ago today, actually, in May of 2025, this was approved at the preliminary level. It was approved with some considerations for conditional use as well, because the existing use is conditional, but also there is an addition, commercial addition proposed to the site plan of a vape store. And that vape store would constitute about 1,947 square feet of the proposed 5,000 square foot building. There's also proposed drive-throughs on both the west and east side of the building, and they would service the convenience store on the west side and the vape store on the east side. Again, that was all reviewed under the preliminary site plan, and the preliminary site plan was approved back in May with some exceptions. Sorry, with some conditions, not exceptions. And those conditions, 3 of them to be exact. One, that a traffic study is provided that considers all land uses that utilize the proposed site access. That verification is provided from the UDOT, that UDOT approves the proposed access and the project site plan in general. And that all comments provided by staff in the associated preliminary site plan review report are satisfactorily addressed prior to the final site plan approval. And now, as of now, the applicant has satisfied all 3 of those requirements, except for the 3rd requirement, that all staff comments are addressed appropriately. There's 2 nonconformities with what's proposed right now, and both of those nonconformities, the applicant is requesting an exception for those approvals. And the requests are consistent with our code. So it is permitted if the planning commission decides to grant these exceptions. First of which is a landscape exception, specifically landscaping material requirements. We do require 1 tree and 2 shrubs for every 400 square feet of required landscape area. The applicant is currently proposing no live plant material. As you can see in image 2 of the report, that is the landscaping plan that is proposed. And that is consistent with our code, and it is also consistent with what their secondary water service provider has requested. Actually, the secondary water service provider, Bonavista Water District, has allotted them no water for outside irrigation. And in response, the applicant has adjusted their site plan, taken away all live plant material, and they have provided a variation in decorative rocks to provide some general interest. So with that, and with the letter that was provided by Bonavista, we as in staff do recommend the approval of that exception request. The applicant has also requested a drive-through alternate design. So by code, we do require either landscaping or raised concrete curbing in between a drive-through and any access or egress lanes. So on the west side of the property, there is a drive-through immediately adjacent to an egress that leads southwards towards 2100 South. And there was no raised curbing or landscaping that was put there as required by code. Instead, they have provided an engineering letter from the traffic engineer, Dr. Perrin, that was also attached to your report. So with that, there was some support for the removal of that required curbing to separate the egress from that drive-through. And staff does generally recommend the approval of that request as well, just less enthusiastically. So if the commission is inclined to approve both of those requested exceptions, then staff recommends that the commission approve the final site plan.
Okay, so you need 3 different motions, correct?
That's right.
See, I was following along, so. All right, anybody want to discuss it?
It's good to me.
Okay.
So would the median, just to refresh here, the concrete barrier would only be required on the west side?
Yeah, so
that's
it's
the only
required
area
on
where
both.
No, but they have one on the east side.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someday we need to take that concrete curbing out of the code. Just nothing but rim root.
I was gonna
Going
say
in.
I've ruined mine. I've got a lot of curb rash from those narrow concrete.
Me too. That's something to put on your to-do list somewhere down the line. Anybody want to talk about landscape exception? I don't think there's a problem there.
No.
That's good.
I think we've pretty much beat this one to death the last time we looked at it, so. With that, I'll entertain a motion on the drive-through alternate design.
I can make a motion. I'll make a motion to grant approval of the requested alternate drive-through design proposed without concrete curbing separating the west drive-through aisle from the property egress lane, finding that the alternative design will be equally effective in ensuring the traffic safety and minimizing traffic impacts.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Possible motion on landscape exception.
I'll motion on that. Motion to grant approval of the requested landscaping exception for the property at 1514 West, 2100 South, finding that sufficient evidence has been provided to suggest that the service provider cannot supply sufficient water for landscaping.
Second. George got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I will say one thing. I'm really surprised you got UDOT approval for that other driveway to the east, but anyway, we're on to possible motion on final site plan. I'd do it, but I can't.
I'll motion.
Okay.
Motion to grant final site plan approval for the proposed Super Stop convenience store redevelopment at 1514 West, 2100 South, finding that the design of the proposed site and building is compliant with all applicable regulations of the ordinance and the conditions of the preliminary site plan approval.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You're all set. Oh, you're welcome. That was,
Congratulations.
yeah, it took a while, I bet. All right, item number 11, discussion and action for consideration of a conditional use permit at 4785 West, 4600 South, parcel number 084280017, maximum area exception for a detached accessory dwelling unit, applicant Janine Ross?
Regine.
Regine.
Regine, okay. I know I
they're all
messed up. Okay. I guess they're online?
They are, yes.
Okay,
Or she is.
all right.
So this, again, this is a request for a conditional use permit, and it is for a size exception for an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling units are permitted in the zone, but you can request a conditional use permit if the applicant is looking for a size exception. The location of the address is 4785 West on 4600 South. The property is just shy of an acre in size, and it is zoned A1. The applicant has proposed a detached accessory dwelling unit of 1,782 square feet, where the code does limit a maximum size of a detached accessory dwelling unit to 1,200 square feet. So thus, the applicant has sought that exception for that size discrepancy. So staff's review, the conditional use permit approval criteria is mostly satisfied, with the exception of the general plan and the consistency thereof. It's not perfectly consistent with the general plan in that it's not perfectly compliant with the zoning ordinance. And what's being proposed is not compliant with the zoning ordinance. Well, for one, the size exception, which is being sought for exception, but also what's proposed is by definition a manufactured home. And the code does not allow for manufactured homes to be used for an accessory dwelling unit. So the applicant has first proposed what staff would have categorized as a mobile home as the accessory dwelling unit. But after one iteration of review, it's been proposed a modular home. However, modular homes also fall under the category of manufactured homes by definition in the code. So that is currently not compliant, and because of which staff recommends that the commission move to table this request.
So I do want to point out that the applicant is in disagreement with our interpretation of what is a manufactured home and has provided a statement from the manufacturer builder of the unit. That's currently being reviewed by staff and our building official. We received that earlier today. So I think it's important to mention that. And so that's under review, and we would like some time to, our recommendation to table still stands because we want some time to review what they have provided to and compare it to our definition and see if it still falls under that.
Okay, we can do that. I definitely have some issues with the size, so. But,
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything? No? Okay, entertain a motion.
We want to give her a chance to talk.
Does she want to talk, Melissa? I don't know. Ms. Ross, are you part of this? Is he?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
I don't really have any comments. Everything that I would have liked to be mentioned here was mentioned, so I definitely appreciate that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for her?
No, I don't. I do want to take the opportunity to discuss ADUs and the purpose of ADUs. So when we go back to why we have ADUs and why we have an ADU ordinance in the city, it has to do with the state's requirement to have a moderate income housing element in our general plan. And one of the ways that we've chosen to do that is through an ADU ordinance. So, and you go through and you look at the ADU ordinance and it talks to that. It talks to being able to provide for a moderate income housing, which means lower cost. And so we adopted a 1,200 square foot standard in order to facilitate having that be a lower cost housing. And so other cities, Hooper, for instance, have
two different components of their ordinance, and I've advocated with Stephen for this. They have a component that's for a detached ADU. The Hoopers allows 1,260, slightly larger than ours at 1,200, and for then a separate component that talks to attached ADUs. And I think that's the way we should head, because if you've got a 1,600 square foot basement and you want to put a mother-in-law apartment in there, it doesn't make sense to say you got to wall off 400 square foot of that, and that can only be 1,200 square foot. So I think that's where the exception falls into allowing for a larger ADU. But on a detached ADU, where you've got the opportunity to build it to a size that will promote moderate income housing, I'm pretty hard over on sticking to that 1,200 square foot, or maybe even slightly bigger than 1,200 square foot. But anything that's, much larger, I mean, they're proposing 50% larger. I just can't see that in keeping with the intent to promote moderate income housing. So that's my spiel on this.
Just to play a little bit of devil's advocate there, but on the moderate income housing side, like size wise, 1,200 square feet may have 2 or 3 bedrooms, and that you could do a moderate income housing there. But if you expand to a bigger size, that's still moderate income housing in compared to a slightly larger square footage.
So that's an interesting thing that you said that's 2 bedroom, because the house I lived in Hooper before I moved here was 1,084 square foot. It was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. So it's possible to have a less than 1,200 square foot or 1,200 square foot ADU with 3 bedrooms. Granted, it's not big.
Yeah.
But just by sheer square footage, the larger, you pay more for a 3-bedroom apartment than you do for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And so because the square footage is larger.
And I agree with that. Obviously it's like you can make it work in that size. I grew up in a similar home, but at the same time, when you're saying moderate income housing, that typically compares to the rest of the market. And what does the rest of the market have in terms of sizes for that moderate income housing? That makes sense.
Moderate income housing has a very defined price. It's 80% of the median income for West Haven, and 30% of that spent on housing. If you're buying a home, that's PITI, that's utilities as well. If you're renting, that's your rent and your utilities. So there's a very, very specific dollar amount, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's about $1,800 to $2,000 a month.
That makes sense.
Okay.
But
I too grew up in a 1,200 square foot house, and I'm looking at what was given to us from the Prestige series here. It's got 3 bedrooms, it's got a living room, it's also got an office, and it's also got a den. And I don't know that we need to make something that big with that kind of extra space in it. It's just too large. I don't mind giving, 100 square feet or something like that to fudge a little bit, but to go, half again, that's a lot. It's outside of what our own ordinance does. And I worry that if we start giving these kind of exceptions, then the next one's going to come in and they're going to want 1,200 feet or 2,000 feet. And it just keeps growing exponentially because we've approved something.
I mean, just logically, the larger the dwelling gets, the more you're going to have to pay for it, whether it's the purchase price or the rental price that translates to the purchase price. I mean, it's just mathematics. And so anytime this expands, we get further, the larger and larger an ADU gets, the further away from providing moderate income housing and the intent of the ADU ordinance we go. So, anyway,
Yeah,
that's
no, that makes sense.
it for me.
I'll admit. I didn't scroll
Anybody?
all the way to the bottom of the packet, I guess.
Anybody else at the, oh. Anybody else have anything? Stephen, would you prefer that we table this so that we can go over the manufactured house?
Yes, I would. My recommendation still stands to table the application.
Okay, anybody want to help Stephen out?
I'll make a motion to table.
Okay,
How's that?
I'll second that. Okay, all right. All in
Why?
favor of tabling it?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Didn't think so. Item number 12.
Your favorite one.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all in
Aye.
favor? Aye. Any opposed? I didn't think so. Thank you very much.
Not gonna give you a chance.